and Matt LaFleur and this and that, because there have been reports that the coaches were the ones that were really ready to move on, even more so than Brian Gutekunst. And Brian Gutekunst has been pretty vocal in a sense of like, it's rare a GM just comes out and makes it sound as if, yeah, we're going to move on from him, or at least paints the picture that there's a good chance you're going to move on, right? So I want to get everybody's take before, and we got Emilio joining us here now. I want to get everybody's take before we kind of dive into this latest report from Rob Demovsky. So try to keep that off the forefront, just how you're feeling right now. Go through and ask the guys, do you agree with the poll question results there with 93% of Packer fans saying yes, they do want Jaire back? I think everybody here, and I don't want to speak for you guys. We'll start with you, Tim. This is kind of a no-brainer. Do you want Jaire Alexander back in a Green Bay Packer uniform next year, man?
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's enough contingency in place that if it's more of the same and Ja's not healthy and he's banged up and he's, he plays 5 games or something, I think we've got enough pieces in play that, we can salvage a season. But I would love to see my boy get one more go in the green and gold in 2025. It's just where I'm at. I've always been there. I've been there since day one, and I'll always be there. And, if we go in different directions and he ends up, signing somewhere else ultimately, or, we get a post-June 1 cut, or maybe a trade gets finalized here in the next couple of weeks, who knows? But I'm 100% in favor of Ja trying to make another run at that starting corner.
Tim, I honestly thought I was going to get this from you.
Took it down.
But yeah, that's I'm in the same boat, man. I've always been for bringing Ja back. I really don't see, I've always been the fact of he's already been paid. He's already on the roster. If all else fails, he's going to play. I mean, the money's already there, accounted for. Yeah, we can cut him and maybe free up a little bit, but let's just move forward with it. Bring the dude back. And could you imagine how, bring him back regardless if he plays or not? Because if he does play, even if he plays 1 game in the regular season and plays 2 in the postseason, 3 in the postseason, and 1 in the postseason, and does something to help this team, it was meant to be, or, squared away to, have his impact on this team, whatever it to be this next year.
Yeah. We got a special request from Boz here with the super chat. He says,
heard it from a fan right here.
Thank you, Boz. Appreciate you, buddy. Good to see you in here, man. Hopefully you enjoyed the draft, and I'm really excited about the draft class. We're going to get into that a little bit more as we go through the offseason a little bit deeper. But, I think he's safe to say Boz wants Jaire back in Green Bay. Thank you for that dono, Boz. You're too kind, man. Aaron Rodgers in the chat said, I voted no because I do not feel like he can stay healthy for the season. I would rather ride with what we have than use the roster spot for a position we added this offseason, aka wide receiver, defensive line. I think that's a very fair point, because that is the negative to this, right? It sounds like a no-brainer when you say, okay, you're just saving $6 million this year. If you go post June 1, you're saving 10 this year. It still comes out to 16, 17 total, right, over the next 2 years. But is it tying up an important roster spot? For me, I would say that's a non-factor for me, Aaron, but I think that's very well thought out for sure. What do y'all think about that? Because it would, man. It's going to take a roster spot if they do decide to keep him, right? Somebody's going to not be on the 53 because of it.
I agree. And I think that's a fair assessment too. I do not feel like he can stay healthy for the season. I 100% understand and agree with you, right? I mean, you look at the past few years, there's no reason to believe that he's going to give us 16, 17, 18, 19 weeks into the playoffs. So I'm just in the camp of, I would like to see him try. I'd like to see him come back one more time. And you're right. It means giving up a roster spot. Maybe that means, those fringe guys don't make the team. We talked about Kalen King last year. He didn't see much of the field. Luckily, Carrington Valentine stepped up last year. We were all pleasantly surprised that Keyshawn was able to play on the boundary and not just in the slot. And then I think you look at this year's draft plus the free agents that we've acquired. I don't think it's the end of the world if we suck up a roster spot for Jaire, because, at the end of the day, I think the pieces are in place. I really do. That if something were to happen and we lost him, for 4 to 6 weeks or something again, I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah. On that note, Emilio, we talk about all the time Bill Walsh 101, wide receiver is the last thing you put in place, right?
Yep.
The last position you put in place. And then you hear Goody talking going into the offseason like we need to go all in as kind of the conversation, like, hey, the window's open type thing. Maybe that's how he looked at this draft is like, hey, let's go get the best receiver we possibly can. As long as the board doesn't just completely crumble, right? Let's go get that receiver and try to put that piece into place, all while at the same time in free agency solidifying the offensive line with Aaron Banks and adding a starting corner in Nate Hobbs.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
that
kind of a floor receiver, right?
Yeah. All right. And it kind of made me think, all right, what's the other factor that holds me back from saying, hey, the Super Bowl window is open? And not necessarily that it's 100% not open, but it's the youth factor, the fact that the youngest team in the league has never won the Super Bowl. Well, you got a little bit older with those two free agent signings, right? They're not crazy old, but what are they, 26, 27 years old each? So maybe you climb out of that, being the youngest team, and now you can cross that off the list. You add a wide receiver, and if they do hit, listen, Matthew Golden could be a complete bust, but he could also be, bang, there's your number one receiver for the next 10 years,
Yep. And that's kind of, the risk you take, pulling the trigger on anybody in the draft, let alone just the first round guy. But, I think that when you think about where this team could head, imagine having a guy like Jai. Yeah, that would be incredible. And I think that, I want him back on this team and all of that. But if not, like we've talked about, you go in free agency, you kind of add some floors, you add some experience playing in big games. Banks played in big games with San Francisco. Mecole Hardman, even if he doesn't make the team, even just in, training camp, bringing some of that Super Bowl mentality, being there, having gotten to that stage. I think that's the way to go. And you're right. You're going to bring talent to try to imagine Ja wanting to go up against Golden, right? Iron sharpens iron. You imagine like getting that kind of in practice. That's what you're looking for. At some point, you got to try to push for that Super Bowl and make that run, right?
Yeah, and I remember that this is kind of that cascading effect that happens over the course of 10 years in professional football. Davante Adams, right? When he came into the league, going against the top corners on the team, kind of helped mold him. Mm-hmm. And then as he became the dominant receiver that he was, you draft Jaire Alexander, and now Ja's having to cover Davante in practice, sharpening him up, right? And then, of course, last year you had Jaire covering Romeo Doubs and your Christian Watsons and folks like that, making them better, right? So it is kind of that. It's going to be neat to see Matthew Golden go up against Ja. That's a camp battle. That would be not a camp battle for a position, but just a camp battle in general would be awesome.
Right. Did you listen to Ross Tucker's today?
What'd he say?
Or maybe it was, I don't know if it was today, but he had Greg Cosell on. And when they talked about the Golden pick, Greg Cosell said, he was like maybe a touch surprised, but, they had been talking about taking a wide receiver here and there. He said, what that probably tells me is that Golden was top 10, top 12 on their board, on their draft board. And the fact that he was there at 23, it was too good to pass up at that point. Even if there was maybe a D lineman that was up there, maybe the 16th spot or the 18th spot, theoretically, I think that it really was just that good of an option. And when you heard Goody talk about it, it's like, yeah, maybe he's right around the threshold, 5'11", whatever. But, if you have that dynamic threat of speed, it's kind of like when we talk about Jaden Milroe, his dynamic threat is his running ability. If you are a wide receiver with a dynamic threat of speed, you can kind of open yourself up to opportunities, not depending completely on your size.
Right. Absolutely, man. Prince in the chat, I want Jaire back because I called the league office and they said we couldn't have a do-over on free agency in the draft. Got it. Greg Rice in the chat says, Ja, most of us believe in you. So Greg Rice is on the Ja train, no doubt. Andy Monday says, vote Ja for Ja. And then Jay Cole says, Ja is definitely going after Golden in practice. There's no doubt about it. That's going to be a blast, man. Absolute blast. All right, so let's get into what we wrote here. It's a real short article we put together just based off of what I heard Rob Demovsky reporting today. Latest news on Jaire Alexander. Now that the NFL draft is come and gone, it seemed like Jaire Alexander's situation is no closer to a resolution. That was until ESPN Packers insider Rob Demovsky sent shockwaves through the Packers fan base with one single tweet. And this is the tweet from Rob. According to a source, now you guys, the reason this was so, I don't want to say, I guess it is shocking. It just, everybody was like, whoa, what is this? Because Rob all offseason has been saying 99.5% Jaire is gone. And now all of a sudden you get this tweet, right? It says, according to a source, the Packers and Jaire Alexander continue to talk about a possible resolution, which could include a reconciliation to where Alexander plays for the Packers in 2025. After all options are still on the table: release, trade, or return. Rob has not talked like that this whole offseason, right? Put in here, recently, all reports indicated that the Packers and Jaire Alexander were headed for a split. However, as Demovsky said on the ESPN Milwaukee airwaves today, it seems both sides have begun to accept the fact that the best option for both parties may be to move forward with Alexander on the roster. Will that come with a contract restructure, adding incentives attached to playing time / production? Demovsky couldn't confirm one way or another, but the two sides engaging in conversations seem to indicate it is an option. All right. And of course, we laid out the contract there. We've talked about it enough. We pretty much know what's on the line. There's 2 years left on the deal with a voidable year that's going to accelerate some dead cap to the year in which they depart from Jaire if they do. Essentially, if you go pre-June 1 this year, you're going to free up $6 million in cap for this year, and then next year there's going to be $10 million, right, is how that's going to work. I'm starting cap penalty, so it'd be freed up. So I miswrote on the article here. I apologize for that. We'll fix that. So basically, you could save $6 million this year, $10 million next year, or if you go post-June 1, it flips. You're going to get roughly $10 million this year, $6 million next year. But the issue with that is, if you go that route, right, it's still the same amount of dead cap. You're going to be on the hook for $16 million. So if we were like in crazy cap trouble right now, you go, okay, let's free up the $10 million now. That way we can get under the cap for stay under the cap and have a little more operating funds as the season gets cranked up. None of that applies to the Packers. So that really
right.
Pre-June, post-June. I hear people go, well, it makes a lot of sense to go post-June 1 because you free up $10 million. Why does that matter? You're not going to go out and sign a free agent for $10 million. You know what I'm saying, Amelia?
And I mean, where do you have all these spots on this roster anyway? I mean, if we're happy with where we're at on this, you've drafted a lot of players. You think you have a lot of guys heading in the right direction. There's not a bunch more spots. We're already trying to talk about the wide receiver room. We're already going to talk about, all the other rooms that we're adding to our D-line room, O-line, my boy Glover. I mean, we need a spot for him. So it's like, I really like Belton. So, I mean, Belton could be the new Glover. But, you really, everyone's got to find their spot. And, I mean, thinking about $6-10 million, you could get that next year in the, once they up the money coming into the team from the TV deals and all that. So it's not like it's, you're that strapped for cash. We're not the Saints.
Right. And I want to say this. I see people in the chat, and look, this is a fair comment. All these are, right? Greg Rice says, Rob is all over the road. Pick a lane. J. Cole says, is Rob walking back what he said, right? Prince says, scouting report on Demovsky, fleet-footed in the back pedal, right? But here's the reality of it. It's easy as a fan to just say, oh, boy, he's been all over the joint. He's reporting from both camps. Yeah. And if you really go back to how this fell into play, how we got to this point, everything he reported is accurate. They wanted to move. At the end of the season, the coaches were done with Ja, and Ja was done with the team. He made a comment on his way out the door, right? So he reported that, and it sounds like, all right, he's gone. And then going into the draft situation, it's okay, they're going to try to trade him. Well, one team agreed to a trade. Ja refused to restructure his contract to make it more team-friendly for that team. So that report was true. Ja prevented the trade from happening, right? And then you get to the point where it's like, okay, there's no more trade offers. There's nobody coming flying in. At least as of right now, that could change tomorrow, right? But it seems like people seem to be pretty happy with what they got in the draft. And Goody, all along, as Rob Demovsky has pointed out, and Tom Silverstein as well, he's not going to just cut him until he absolutely has to. He's going to try to get something back from him if he's not going to be a Packer. So I just want to say that I understand where you guys are coming from, because if you're just hearing the random reporting, just a little blips, and you see them on the articles here and there or on Twitter, I can see how someone could come away and go, boy, he's really backpedaling. No, this is the evolution of the situation, in my opinion, Tim. It's not just something that's like, cut and dry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And we used to say, or at least I did months ago, that Ja's not going to restructure for anyone. We didn't expect that, right? Now I'm kind of, with these recent reports, it's like, if he's going to restructure for anyone, it's going to be for the Packers. I don't put it past him to, maybe not necessarily go team friendly, but at least be willing to rework a deal to make it make sense to stay in Green Bay, at least for the near foreseeable future. But at the end of the day, we still don't know. We won't know until something shakes loose or something happens. But, I definitely think the tides are turning, and you're right. It's not an indictment on Rob Demovsky or any of the beat writers. It's just a matter of this is an ongoing situation. It has been really since, last season ended. And, here we are. This is where the story's at right now,
Yeah. J. Cole says, I like Rob. I'm just saying that's what it seems to be. I just thought there was no chance Job would be back. And Jay, you're 100% correct. Rob made it sound like there was less than 1%. I mean, he literally said 99.5% chance he's not back. Sometimes that 0.5% will get you, Emilio. You know what I'm talking about?
Hey, that's not a good look. It's tough, but you're right. He's just trying to cover both sides. But that's also the other thing is where you go out on a limb and you say that one thing. You can't take words back, right? You can always add to them, but he said what he said about the situation. Now he's trying to give new information to update that situation, and it just is what it is. I mean, it's not going to matter once training camp starts. We're not going to talk about Rob in this tweet. We might talk about the Josh situation depending, but it's going to be all football and just move forward for the Green Bay Packers, and that's what it's got to be about.
Yeah. Things could be a lot worse. I could be a Bears fan.
It could be. Deadfish says, I still think Ja's comment at the end of the day was his being frustrated that the Packers lost the feeling he couldn't do nothing to help. And that could have been the case, too, as he's leaving the locker room like, I ain't got nothing nice to say, basically. I want to say there was a comment in there, too, though, that he said, I'm not going to be here next year anyway. That's the one that kind of was like, whoa, that was a little bit polarizing there. Chris says, Ja ain't reworking nada. See, that's where I've kind of thought about this, Chris. I could see where it would be beneficial for him, like if he says, no, I'm not working the deal and forces the Packers to cut him, and then he misses out on that money, and then he goes somewhere else, right?
And ends up taking less anyway.
Right. And here's the thing that fan, and not you, Chris, this isn't a shot at you. I'm just saying, like, I didn't realize it for a long time as a fan. It's easy to go, it's not all about, that extra $1 million or $2 million, just go play somewhere else. You've got to pack up and move to another city. And in some cases, a city that's got higher taxes. Like if you go to LA or you go to New York, you're really taking a big pay cut.
Perfect example. Nico, UT's old quarterback, was going to get $2.5 million. He goes to UCLA, gets like 1.8 or something, and then there's $900,000 in taxes that California takes out of him. So the dude's taking home like $800,000. Like right. It's like you really can lose a lot of money just by picking the state.
Right. And again, reworking the deal, that whole Nico thing is wild because he literally had $2.5 million on the table in Tennessee where there's no state tax, right?
Mm-hmm. In an offense he's already worked in, ready to go. He was the starting quarterback, new couple of linemen.
He goes to UCLA for less money, and then they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, bub, got some pretty big tax hikes coming your way. So, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it's beautiful out there. But anyway, in reworking the deal, what it's suggesting is lower the cap number but add incentives in. That way he could actually – you'd have to sweeten the pot for Ja to go, you can actually make more money than we're on the hook for right now if you hit this, and this, right? To me, that sounds like the best possible opportunity for both sides, personally. Right. That way, if he doesn't hit those incentives, then he doesn't get that money.
And maybe even just the draft class that we had was like, oh, okay, like they're serious about X, Y, and Z. Or maybe he didn't think that they were serious about the wide receiver room until they went and got a first-round wide receiver. And maybe, when he saw Savion, whatever. And now he's like, okay, I kind of like the way this team is looking. If I'm the number one corner, bing, bam, boom, we're cruising. Yeah.
Junie in the chat, hopefully I'm saying that name right, buddy. Good to see you in there. He says, do you guys want him back? He's just going to re-injured his injury, okay? The cycle is not going to stop for him. God bless him. but his time is up in Green Bay. Realistically, he's done as a top corner. When you look at the grades here, it's hard to argue with that, Junie. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say there's no chance that he could stay healthy. Now I understand where you're coming from too. You're talking about, if I heard the number correctly, over the last 3 years, and I'm not saying this just because of the 65% drop. Over the 3 of the last 4 years, he's played in less than 65% of the snaps, right? So there is some precedent there for what you're saying for sure. As far as being a top corner, you look at the grades. He peaked in 2020 with a 90.5 grade, 72, 73, then that 90. Then he drops back to a 77, jumps to an 80, drops to a 70, jumps back to a 75. So, when you say he's not going to play like a top corner, I guess it depends on, what you consider a top corner. To me, he's those grades and the passer rating when targeted over the last, let's say, 5 years have been number one corner, type numbers. But again, getting banged up and getting a little longer in the tooth would suggest you're not going to just magically get healthier. So I understand where you're coming from there too. I do think the question I got, Junia, and really just asking myself and asking anyone who wants to hear it is the team better with him on it? Yes or no? And I don't think, if anybody says no, I just have to respectfully disagree.
Could be a crackhead. You got hold to the wrong stuff.
Daryl said, go ahead and hit it for us, Tim, when you get a chance there. I mean, when you get a stat like that, of over 3 of the last 4 years, you played less than 65% of the snaps.
65%. 65%. That's what
God bless Mark Murphy, man.
Didn't she bring that up to him? The 65% drop. Was it Mina Kimes that was interviewing him?
It seems like she did.
And she was just like, yeah. And he goes, well, you know what? I haven't really seen it, but yeah, 60. It's a good number or something like that. He was funny, man. That was a good interview.
Yeah, it was, man, for sure. All right, so just a couple of the comments, and we'll wrap this little segment up. I think it's important to hit on it because this is going to shape that cornerback room, and we're going to do a cornerback deep dive here soon. I've been trying to hold off on it to see what happens with Ja because I don't want to go, all right, you got Jaire, and then next day he's gone, right? But Andrew Matson in the Patreon group here, and that's where you can find this article, by the way. You can be the first to read that. Any kind of information we put together, like the wide receiver room we're going to cover here in a second. You guys have early access to all that in the Patreon group. Just scan the QR code in the upper right or go to patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. You're going to see 3 tiers. You're going to see like a $10 tier, a $5 tier, a $3 tier. The cheap one, the $3 tier, gets you everything on the site. Those others are just there per requested from listeners wanting to be able to donate a little bit more to the show. We're going to be giving away an autographed rookie Bo Melton card this Saturday. So if you're a member of the $3 tier, then you'll be put on the wheel. We'll put everybody on there, spin that sucker, and then give that card away. So we got some jerseys.
cheese curds and my stomach hurt all the time, but I do eat them though.
We got some autographed jerseys coming up here real soon as well. Anyway, Andrew Matson says, I was pretty sure they were keeping him pre-draft, only more confident post-draft that he's staying. The value is obviously not what Goody wants for a trade. Otherwise, he'd be gone. Cutting him and eating $6 million in dead cap seems insane when our team is better with him on it. So I agree with that for sure. Chris N says, wow, we have a pulse, just talking about the fact that it seems like there is a chance he could return now. J. Cole, this Jaire and Packer situation is like a couple that lived together and broke up. Both couldn't afford to move out because of financial issues. Now reconciliation starts. Give Ja another year and move on after this season. There you go. You remember that movie? What was it called? The Apartment? Is that what it was called? No, The Break. Was it The Breakup? What was it called? It was Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston. One of the best.
I think The Breakup is closer to what you're looking for.
Yeah, that was that was great. The Madden scene in that was unbelievable. By the way, go watch that. Yeah, I just gotta credit these polygonal heroes with the big hearts. That's what he said. BU Rant says, my favorite Packers player. I'm holding out hope they could figure it out, man. When he's on, he's on. There's no two ways about it. And his teammates love him. That's one thing. There's some people that paint this picture like he's a bad teammate. You may think that, but his teammates sure don't. They love him in that locker room. United Bates says Jaire games played, I believe is what he meant, per season of his career. 13, 16, 15, 4, 16, 7, and 7. So there's those 3 out of the 4 years we were talking about.
So let's look at the trend, right? So that means he's due for like a 14-game season.
Right. Or the whole career is going to come to a screeching halt.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He's either going to play the whole year or it's going to be more of the same.
Right, and if it does come to a screeching halt, what's it matter at the point of him he's not on the roster next year, right? I mean,
Yep.
you know, we have a little dead cap or something that's still attached, I think, from a year, but besides that, we're done. We pick up a 2-lane corner, we pick up whoever else that, you know, is going to start showing out. If King starts showing up coming up from the 7th round, hey, let's go for it. But, you know, right now,
it's really what it comes down to, Emilio. It's like the people who are hell bent on moving on from him. It just comes down to a roster spot. Like the cap situation is not an issue at all. It's not an issue at all. So that's really what it comes down to. Let's see here. Greg Rice says there isn't a cornerback that we can replace Ja with for $10 million, is there? There really isn't, Greg.
Nope.
That's the point, right? That's the point.
Nope.
So, and listen, there's also the side of the argument that, hey, if we keep Ja and he, you know, you get him all those practice reps and you get into week 4, he gets hurt, and now he's out, you've robbed a younger player from those practice reps, right? And that's what you call progress stopping. You know, we talk about that a lot. I think Emilio's got a cat hanging off the camera. You see it moving just now, too?
they're out of hand, I'm telling you.
Is that what it was, really, a cat?
Yeah. They go around just headbutting the stand.
So anyway, look at Cam in here. I love it. Woo, I thought you meant Kevin King. Keep that name out of my mouth, Cam.
Yeah, please.
Man. All right, so we've covered it pretty extensively there with Jaire Alexander. Let's just get some closing thoughts here as we get ready to go into another Jaire watch for the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, who knows, maybe 6 months. But anything else you want to add to that, Emilio, that we might have missed?
I just hope that we just keep diving into tape and other things, because I mean that's just going to boil and do whatever